Pierce is the Vice President of Insights with Nutrition Business Journal in Informa Markets and with New Hope Network in the USA. I just want to ask you all, just for a moment, who here is familiar at all with Nutrition Business Journal, our reports, or the journal? Very good. Well, you'll learn a lot today, and Eric will talk to you a little bit about the model that Nutrition Business Journal uses to produce the data on the supplement marketplace. So without any further delay, let me hand it over to Eric.
Thank you, Fran. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I really do appreciate you choosing to spend a part of your morning with us and with me here in particular. As Fran said, my name is Eric Pierce. I'm Vice President of Business Insights at New Hope and Informa Markets. I oversee and manage the Nutrition Business Journal as well as the Next Data and Insights teams for New Hope. Our team really sees it as our responsibility to help drive responsible growth of the dietary supplements and natural and organic marketplaces overall. And we work to do that by giving the marketplace a voice. A voice sort of like the voice we're giving to the market today with research and analyses and reports like the one I'm going to share with you, in the hopes that this helps you and your businesses make better decisions, more informed decisions about how you pursue growth and marketplace opportunities. Over the last 2.5 years, there's been a lot of uncertainty and change in the marketplace, and it's a good time to stop and to pause and to think a little bit differently about how we evaluate and assess the risks and the opportunity in a COVID-changed marketplace. As we begin to pursue that, one of the things I'd like to do for you today is I'd like to help you get an orientation to where the market is now and where it's going in the future and where there might be opportunities for you. We're going to do that by answering the following 4 questions on the screen. What is the state of the global supplement marketplace today? Which markets offer attractive growth potential? What trends are driving innovation? And what product categories are driving growth? Again, the aim for our session today is to help you aim your business strategy at the sectors of growth that might offer the most opportunity for you or for your business. In order to do this, we're going to be leveraging data and insights from the Nutrition Business Journal model that Fran mentioned. The business often goes by NBJ. And for the last 25 years, we have been sort of the primary trusted source for market size and growth figures for the nutrition industry at large, dietary supplements, as well as the U.S. health and wellness marketplace overall. We're going to be sharing with you today data from our global analyses. And again, NBJ for the last 25 years has been seen as a source that helps empower professionals. We see it as our goal to help the nutrition industry with reporting, market sizing, data analysis that helps advance businesses and helps them move forward. As I mentioned, we're going to be drawing data and insights from 2 reports that we're sharing with you today, the Global Supplement Business Report as well as the U.S. Business Supplement Report. We're going to spend most of our time with the Global Report. We'll share data with you. If you want to learn more about that, I left a few cards out that have information. I'll also give you some contact details at the end of the session if you need to learn more or want to learn more. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Nutrition Business Journal, let me talk briefly about the methodology because the methodology is actually important. Where do these numbers come from? Why can you trust them? The NBJ modeling is rather unique. In the dietary supplement space, it's hard to find concrete numbers on the size and the growth of the industry, especially at a global level. We, over 25 years, have built models that are based on a variety of different inputs. These variety of inputs are very important. They help us build a top-down and a bottom-up approach to assessing the opportunities and the growth in the marketplace overall. We use point-of-sale data where it's available. We research and connect with partner agencies to use their research services. We follow press releases, articles, public filings from companies that are big in the industry. We do industry surveys, as well as we do one-on-one interviews with trade organizations, with ingredient suppliers, and finished goods manufacturers. And we use all of those different inputs in order to help us come up with the market projections that we have, as well as the growth and the size of the marketplace overall. So while there isn't any one source that's tracking POS data, what we're trying to do is bring in all these different data sources to make the best estimates available on the size of the market and where it's growing. So let's get into the analysis. The first of the questions that we're going to answer today is, what is the state of the global supplement marketplace? Really quickly, the Global Supplement Report touches on 22 different markets. For the analysis I'm going to share with you today, I've zeroed in on 16 of the smaller markets and regions. There are a few larger regions like all of Latin America, that are grouped together in some of our analyses. Africa is grouped together because we can't get to country-level data for those. We've excluded those from some of our analyses today, but we're going to focus on 16 individual markets and smaller regions that were more conducive to the analysis we're going to share. First, let's start with a broad overview of the dietary supplement marketplace. So, setting the stage, it's not surprising and it's not news to anybody here that the dietary supplement marketplace was impacted in a big way by COVID. In 2020, the first year of the pandemic, the industry added about $16 billion in sales, taking the industry from a global number of about $142 billion to $158 billion in 2020. As a really quick note for everybody, the dollar figures we're sharing with you throughout this presentation today are US dollar figures. Where are we at now, and where do we see the market going into the future? So what you're looking at on this particular slide are the sales dollar figures in the green bars, with estimates or projections into the future in the gray bars. This report was published in late 2021, so we're calling those estimates because not all the final numbers were in. And we have a growth rate on the right-hand axis and in that yellow line there. What we saw is after a massive 11% growth rate, global growth rate in 2020, the growth has slowed a bit. In 2021, we are estimating that final growth was probably somewhere around 5.9%, adding another $9 billion in sales to that $16 billion that was added in 2020 in our 2021 figures. What we are seeing is growth is slowing a little bit in the years ahead. And so while that's true, what I want to do is I want to point out the differences between these green bars and the blue bars and the dollar figures, or the dollar figures at the top of the page. What these are our pre-pandemic estimates. So these are the projections that we had made back in 2019 prior to the pandemic in comparison to our current estimates. And so while we're seeing the marketplace growth slow considerably in the years ahead, what we are actually seeing is the marketplace is better off and stronger than it was pre-pandemic. That 11% growth that we saw in 2020 was probably front-loading a little bit of growth that was probably coming anyways. But even in 2022, we're estimated to put on another $4.1 billion in global sales. And by 2024, we continue to be better off than we were pre-pandemic, adding another $1.8 billion to growth in 2024. In just a minute, we're going to transition to our second question and help you begin to assess where opportunities for growth might be in the marketplace. Before we do that, it's helpful to have a general sense of how market sales are distributed across the globe today. One of the first things you see here is that the majority of the marketplace is dominated by a handful of markets and larger regions, the United States and China together representing nearly 50% of all global sales, followed by Western Europe, India playing a major role, Latin America and Japan being in a large market. We'll break this down and give you a little bit more detail in just a moment, but this is the broad representation of how that $167 billion is currently distributed across the market. So again, we're going to transition now to talking a little bit about where are there potentially attractive market opportunities for your business. This is where we're going to narrow in on those 16 markets that I mentioned a minute ago. This, as one begins to look for opportunities in the marketplace, this might be the easiest place to look. And then I'm going to invite you to question whether this is the best way to think about the marketplace. But first and foremost, what we're looking at here is a plot of supplement sales on the horizontal axis by supplement growth on the vertical axis. What we've done is we've plotted those 16 markets. Just so you know, the crosshairs of this 2x2 chart are plotted at the average for the metrics on the chart. That's going to be the same in all the 2x2s that we share today. So just know that above a line is above average, below a line is below average for any particular metric. Similarly on the right, above average, and on the left, below average. What we see here reflects a little bit of what we saw on the pie chart. That if you look broadly at growth rate and total dollar sales for the market, you see these sort of standout markets of China, the United States, India, and Japan representing potentially the biggest areas of opportunity. The US, by far the largest market, approaching 57, it'll be $60 billion in US supplement sales before too long. China closely following at around $25 billion in sales overall. India, another massive market, above average growth rate, representing the third largest market. In terms of a standout from a growth perspective, the United Kingdom doing quite well. And the fourth largest market is actually Japan, but growth rate is considerably smaller. Again, this is a really attractive way of looking at the market and understanding what the opportunity might look like. But I don't think it tells quite enough of the story. This has been the story that many people have looked at, and what it often leads people to do is think that China and India are really attractive markets. And I believe that they are, and what I want to do today is offer you a different perspective, that yes, these are attractive markets for certain reasons, and there might be other ways to look at the market as well. So what we've done we're going to do several 2x2 analyses here to show you different perspectives on how to think about the market. Again, what we're doing is that we're looking at a 2x2 that is similar to the one we saw before, but instead what we're doing is we're taking into consideration market size in terms of the number of potential consumers. So this is population on the vertical axis by share of supplement sales on the horizontal axis. This actually makes a more dramatic version of the chart that we looked at earlier. We see US, China, India, and Japan kind of standing out again, but when we take population size into account, we see all the other markets, the smaller markets, kind of cluster into that bottom left-hand quadrant, making it look like they're not quite as attractive. This is the assumption I want to challenge today, because if we begin to think differently about this 2x2, not as a 2x2 plot, but maybe as a ratio, we'll show you a ratio in a second, that if we begin to think about population size in relation to supplement sales, we might think differently about where opportunity exists in the market. I'm not saying any market is or is not a good way of a good opportunity, but what I am doing is encouraging you to think more broadly about how you assess opportunity. If we look at supplement sales per capita, suddenly the really large markets look a little bit differently, right? If we think of the United States as one of the more attractive markets for the dietary supplement industry, one could ask, how do I find more markets that look like the US, right? And I think looking at sales per capita is one way to begin to do that. Of course, you can look at China and see 1.4 billion potential customers and $25 billion in sales and say that's really attractive. But on a per capita basis, that's only $9 of supplement sales per individual in that market. In comparison to a much smaller market, people might look to Australia and New Zealand as a combined market and say that's not as attractive as these massive markets with billions of customers. Only 3.1 million consumers, but a per capita supplement sales of $106 per consumer. Maybe that is something worth considering. Maybe we do need to be looking at that bottom left-hand quadrant a little bit differently. So let's do that. Let's think a little bit differently about the market opportunity. What I think we're doing here with this particular ratio is we're looking at metrics similar to what were plotted on the 2x2 a minute ago, but we're beginning to calculate a ratio that I think represents something that looks like market efficiency, right? What we've done is we've taken the share of supplement sales in a particular market, and we've crossed that with the share of population for the 16 markets that we're looking at today. And so we're looking at that ratio of share of sales to share of population, looking to understand which markets might be more efficient for us to enter, which ones might be more developed as supplement markets, which consumers might be more prone to engage with our products and our services. And what we begin to see here is a little bit of what I was hinting at on the prior slide with the sales per capita, is that sometimes these smaller markets are more attractive. What we're seeing is the markets with this highest ratio, the more developed, more efficient markets to enter, are the United States, again, the combined region of Australia and New Zealand. Japan suddenly looks more attractive than it was despite its low growth rate from the prior charts. Belgium and Luxembourg and Scandinavia kind of making a top 5 list on this market efficiency calculation. Another way we can look at market opportunity is to think about the spending power of a market, their ability to buy our products. I want to pause here for just a second and say that we are the dietary supplement industry, we are the nutrition industry, and we are not all about making profit. Of course, it is our responsibility. I believe many in the audience and myself believe that it is our responsibility to make better nutrition available to those who need it most. For the moment, we are going to look at prosperity or wealth as a way of helping to drive financial growth for our businesses so that we can make the investments in affordable access in other places. So, with that in mind, what we're looking at here is sort of a measure of domestic spending power per country. We're looking at nominal GDP on our horizontal axis and supplement sales per capita, on our horizontal supplement sales per capita horizontal and nominal GDP or spending power effectively on the vertical axis. And what we see here is a different way, again, of assessing opportunity that potentially favors some of those smaller markets that from a sheer dollar size or sheer population size might be easy to overlook. Here we're beginning to see that markets that look a little bit more like the US are again Australia, Scandinavia, broadly Belgium and Luxembourg, Canada, the Netherlands, and Switzerland and Austria, and other markets like that. So different ways of assessing market opportunity and thinking about the market overall. My intent for this portion of the presentation was to help you identify some markets that might be good opportunities for growth for your business. I think, of course, it makes sense for each of you to think about your own business, to look at your market, to consider the competitive situation in these different markets, to look more deeply. But here's 3 different ways of thinking about market opportunity. The sales and growth figures we talked about, that market efficiency ratio that we calculated, and the spending power figures overall. If we look across these 3 analyses and look for markets that appeared in 2 or more of these, we end up with sort of a short list of the United States, the Benelux region in general, Japan, the combined markets of Australia and New Zealand, and Scandinavia. We're going to come back to these 5 markets near the end of our presentation and share a little bit more data about each of those markets. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to transition to our 3rd question for today. I promised to talk a little bit about the trends that are driving growth in the industry, and that's what we're going to do now. All right, so CBD, I don't need to tell anyone, CBD's been a hot area of innovation over the last several years. What I want to do is tell you about CBD and some of the changes that we've seen in the marketplace. I think people are sort of familiar with this shift, but for years, CBD was the hot area of innovation. We saw a lot of companies launching as CBD exclusive companies. And what we're beginning to see, or what we've seen over the last roughly 2 years, is a migration of CBD from the hot individual ingredient to something that is actually one of several important and valuable urban botanical ingredients to be formulating with. So many of those companies that launched as CBD exclusive companies are now positioning themselves as broader supplement companies that are including some CBD products in their lineup, or some multi-formulated products that include CBD, and some non-CBD products entirely as well. We're also seeing CBD added in as an additional herbal ingredient alongside others for companies that didn't originally launch with CBD. So kind of a migration of CBD from hero to strong supporting actor in the marketplace overall. We continue to see a lot of innovation. It's easy to see on the show floor, especially on the purple carpet, a lot of innovation outside of traditional pills and capsules. In the US, the pill and capsule is no longer the majority share of supplement sales. It's still a major player, but it is no longer 50% or more of all supplement sales. We continue to see innovation in chocolates and fast melts, and of course gummies as well. And so lots of opportunity to engage consumers with different delivery formats in the market broadly. One of the broad trends that we're seeing is, again, in relation to hot ingredients. Of course, hot ingredients have long been a powerful way of selling supplements in the market. We're beginning to see and have been tracking changes in really consumers, as well as innovators, looking to conditions as a primary way of having a conversation with consumers, as opposed to relying on hot ingredients or single ingredient formulations to do that communication. So condition over ingredient. But also taking that one step further, we're seeing benefits over condition emerge as a disruptive way of engaging consumers. This is almost an emotional play, where rather than talking about a health condition, many brands are beginning to talk about delivering peace or joy or happiness, more emotional communication with consumers, promising an end benefit that isn't necessarily a health outcome. You might have a sleep or a stress supplement that's talking more broadly about energy or joy or happiness or something else. And again, not a predominant play, but again, those who are experimenting with different ways of engaging consumers are playing with emotion a little bit more than they had in the past. It's 2022, of course, I have to talk about immunity. That's been a hot area of innovation. I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with this trend at this point. Immunity has really made a major transition over the last few years of being a seasonal ingredient or a seasonal sort of product claim that someone takes when they're feeling unwell or afraid they might get sick to boost their immunity, to an everyday positioning. And then it's also transitioned from an everyday positioning into a supporting benefit. So now we're seeing multivitamins that are making immunity claims alongside being just a regular multivitamin. We're seeing omega products adding immunity products and ingredients and claims, and sleep products, kind of looking for that mutual benefit of better sleep, better immunity, both through the ingredients and through the lifestyle choice of prioritizing sleep and getting better sleep in one's life. And then we've got easing stress with botanicals. In the US especially, this has been a hot area of innovation where stress, especially for younger consumers, seem to be one of the strongest health concerns that people are managing. And so we've seen a lot of innovation with traditional herbs and botanicals as well as new innovative herbs and botanicals in this space. All right. So what product categories are selling most? The last of our 4 questions. We're going to return to the 5 markets that I mentioned before in our analysis to give you a quick preview of some of those opportunity areas and to get a little bit more granular. In our global report, we present numbers on 3 product categories. Broadly speaking, vitamins and minerals, the herbs and botanical space, and then in kind of a combined area of sports nutrition, meal replacement, and specialty supplements. In our US reporting, we go into a much more detail at the global reporting for product categories. We have to keep it at about this high level. But these are the global numbers for these 3 product categories, and you can see attractive opportunities in each one of them. The largest opportunity, or the largest market area, is the vitamins and minerals. The fastest growing is sports nutrition area more broadly, and herbs and botanicals is very attractive in certain markets as well. Let's show you which markets are strong for each. So this is a quick snapshot of each of those 5 markets. The US, again, approaching $60 billion in total dietary supplement sales. And the real standout from a growth perspective in the US market is that herbs and botanicals space. It's estimated to grow in 2021, or to have grown in 2021 at nearly 9% or 9.2% overall. That's the smallest category, herbs and botanicals in the US, but the fastest growing currently. Next is Belgium and Luxembourg. Again, a smaller market, approaching $1 billion in sales, but very attractive as we saw from a potential customer perspective, from a wealth perspective, from an efficiency perspective. In this particular market, sports nutrition and vitamin and minerals are both growing at that 4 to 4.5%. Herbs and botanicals a little bit slower. Japan is next, a larger market, about $12 billion in total sales in 2021, but much slower growth overall. I would say still an attractive market. If we think about those other metrics, despite slower growth, this is still a very prosperous market, an efficient market to consider entering, but about 2% growth overall and about equal 2% growth across all of our product categories. Sorry. I'm trying to be patient with the clicker here. All right. Australia and New Zealand is next up at about $3.1 billion in total sales. The strongest growth driver here by far is sports nutrition, that meal replacement and specialty supplement category, 5.3% growth in 2021. And I think our last market is coming up here in a second. Scandinavia coming in at about $2 billion in total sales in 2021, with strongest growth again in the sports nutrition category at about 4.2% growth overall. So, just to kind of recap what we talked about today, no major conclusions. I think hopefully empowering you to think about marketplace opportunities in a few different ways. As you look for the next opportunity for your business, consider a variety of different metrics. Of course, sales and growth, but also market efficiency and spending power and market development and competitive factors for your own particular products and market. Look to trends for inspiration and ideas as to where you might grow your portfolio. And of course, take this time to study the individual dynamics in every market. They're all fairly unique. We saw that the growth rates were different for different product categories across the market. And of course, so you want to look for where those opportunities exist for you. If you're interested in learning more about any of these markets, again, the 22 markets in the global report, both the global report and the US supplement report, as well as a lot of other NBJ resources are available at store.newhope.com. And, bummer. All right. And I would also like to offer anyone who's here today a free issue of our subscription. So if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what our monthly reporting looks like, mostly specific to the US marketplace, but there's some really rich insights that provide insight for broadly the industry overall. Please contact my colleague, Cindy Van Schouwen. She'd be happy to offer you up a free issue of the report. She can also answer questions about this report or anything else that we do, should you need that. So with that, thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your time. Actually, we have potential opportunity for questions.
We do. We have a couple of minutes for questions, so just standing up in front of you for a second, but I will pass this mic if you have questions. And we did have a couple of questions that came in online, so I'm going to pose them right away, one of which I know the answer to. So there was a question about correlation between supplement usage and life expectancy, and this is really by a nation basis. I know we don't exactly track that, and that's a difficult thing to track. And I also do know that there's a correlation between per capita income, education level, and supplement usage, which has a correlation with life expectancy. But I wanted to see if there was any other comments that you might make on that.
I hadn't analyzed that one, but I would love to just do another 2x2 on that in terms of looking at it. We do know that, generally speaking, historically, we've believed as an industry that as consumers age, they think more about their health and they engage in supplements more. And it's also surprising that younger millennial and Gen Z consumers aren't disenfranchised or disconnected from the market. There's actually reasonably strong supplement usage and engagement for younger consumers as well. That's more of a life stage analysis than a life expectancy, but definitely interesting things to look at. We've done analysis on that in the US marketplace that we can provide to people if they're interested, but haven't done that globally.
I would love to see information on level of education, too, if there's a correlation on that. That would be very, very interesting to see. Another question that came online also was related to the botanical marketplace. And I do know that NBJ tracks botanical specifically, too, on a category basis, so maybe you can make some comments about that, about accessing information about the botanical larger category sales.
Yeah. I mean, there's again, for the U.S. marketplace, where we have more depth than we do globally, there's a lot of detail in some of our reports. We have the condition specific, which we'll cover very closely on that, and then we publish the herbs and botanicals report as well. And so, too much and too broad to make any particular comments now, but those are resources that in the U.S. market we look very closely at, and in the global report there is some commentary for each market on what we've seen and heard from experts regarding category growth, market by market on that.
So more information on that directly at NBJ and through Cindy Van Schouwen, whose contact is on that card that we placed on the seat. I never did tell you who I am either. I'm Fran Schoenwetter with Informa Markets, and I'm a content director with Informa Markets in the United States and with Natural Products Insider. So it's a good to know who's talking to you. So before we close, I wanted to just open this up again to the audience. We've got a lot of people here, and let's see what we've got.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We actually do use your report, and it's really, really useful. Question about the trends. Everybody's talking about gummies the next thing. Everybody's so tired about pills. Can you comment on how long do you think that trend is going to stay? Are we talking about years, longer than years? And if you can comment on what would be the next gummy.
Yeah. So for the U.S. market, woo! That's all right. It's easy to forget where the speakers are in the room. So I think we're projecting strong growth. I don't have the numbers in the top of my mind. We did just put out our first delivery supplement report or delivery format report, and so we have official projections now on that very specific question. I just don't have it top of mind. But I think that a lot of what's happening in the delivery format innovation is people are finding engaging ways to connect with consumers that is really connecting to a core need. I mean, one of the biggest challenges we've had as an industry is compliance over time. And I think that what has really worked with gummies is it's given people a small emotional reason to stay engaged with the product. And I think that's part of why we're seeing strong sales, is it's probably getting better repeat sales and more longevity and engagement for consumers. It's a small thing, but a sweet little treat, something that people can look forward to as opposed to an obligation. Maybe a bad tasting obligation that people put themselves through every day, is a big deal from a simple psychological perspective. So I think that's driving a lot of innovation in delivery formats, and the reason why gummies seem to have this contradiction of you want health and yet you're taking something sweet with a big sugar load potentially that consumers are comfortable with. because it's reinforcing a good behavior despite the sugar that many of them are delivered in. I hope that helps.
All right. Yeah, people like to eat, and they like to eat, and they like to experience pleasure. And taking pills is not always completely pleasurable, but also payload for dietary supplements isn't always hospitable inside a gummy. So lots of room for innovation in the space. And I'll also plug the recent report on delivery systems. It's a great report, really very informative. So any more questions before we close?
Right next to the speaker again.
And I'll watch out for the speaker here.
You might want to step forward in front of the speakers.
That would be good.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm from Maypro, New York. So regarding the immune category, I remember there was like a 70% growth in US in 2020. How do you see the trend moving forward?
Did you say in
The immune market.
in the immune market?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people were concerned that it would drop off really suddenly following the pandemic, and I think that there is an expected slower growth rate, but I do think that what it's done is, I think in many ways from a consumer psychology perspective, we're going to be dealing with and living with a greater awareness of our immune system and our general health overall. I don't see it going away. I see it being an overall lift, slowed growth, but continued at a higher baseline, and I would say good growth overall, especially as we see innovation in other categories. So if I'm an ingredient manufacturer in that space, I'd feel really good about the opportunity to offer immunity innovation in categories that have previously not been terribly accessible, and so that's where I see real opportunity.